There's far too much hurt, far too many broken relationships.
Far too much anger, far too much hatred.
Let's take hate out. Let's take hate out of the conversation.
Let's take hate out of the conversation. Don't stop the conversation.
But have it without the hate. Conversations can be hard, difficult, and even uncomfortable.
But to build a better future, we need to have them.
Let's work together.
Let's work together to take hate out of the conversation.
All right, hey, welcome back to another episode of the Peanut Gallery. We have started 2022 off with a focus on ending hatred. And ending hatred probably is too strong. I think we're not that big of a deal. I don't think we're going to end this in one podcast. But there's been a lot of conversation about hatred, about trying to find a way to get along as human beings, ending a lot of the tension. And so when we're watching the news, there's so much around the world that is in turmoil. So much, whether it's racism, whether it's countries battling, all those other things. So what we kind of thought here at the Peanut Gallery was, you know what? I can't change the world, but what we can do is maybe change the way we interact with those that we are actually neighbors with, that we live with. And so maybe I can't change all the racism in the world, but I can certainly work to end hatred in my marriage. I can certainly work to end it in my neighborhood with the people I interact. And I think that's what most of us actually connect with. And I think that's where most of us struggle. And maybe if we can get along with our spouses and our kids and our neighbors and we can learn the lessons there, maybe that transfers over into a better world and creating a better future for our kids. And so with that, we're really, really thrilled to have Dave and Marianne Miller with us. And the Peanut Gallery, they're here.
Isn't there a movie about that? What's it called? Meet the Millers? Meet the Millers?
Yes, there is. Don't watch it.
We are not the
We
Millers.
are not those Millers.
All right, it's Miller time. No.
So some of you guys will remember, Dave, we did a podcast together, and we always have fun topics. It's always
good
just
time.
light and
Good time.
joyful.
Yes,
So we're talking
exactly.
about growing up in a single-parent home and the impact some of that had. So if you guys have not seen that, make sure you check it out. Really, really impactful, really powerful, really good stuff. So thank you for that. With that, so what we're going to talk today about is marriage. And some of the, because sometimes a marriage can be hard. Sometimes we struggle. And there's lots of stories of marriage breaking apart. But you guys have kind of a unique story of restoration. And so I asked you guys to come in, and you guys were kind enough to, and we really appreciate that. So up front, thanks for coming in. I know it takes a lot of courage and
thanks for having
vulnerability.
us.
And so appreciate that. So with that, why don't we start with the good stuff though? You guys met, and Marianne, I guess what we're all wondering is what did you see in him? Like, what is it?
He had
Yeah,
lots
I
of
wanna hear
hair.
this.
He had lots of hair.
Remember that? Yeah, I was 15 and it was all about the hair for me.
Really?
No, yeah, he did have like a full head of curly, almost fro-like hair.
Really?
Yeah, he did. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So you know what? I don't know if our graphics guys could do this, but if we could like zoom in on him and put that fro, like I don't know if we could do that. That'd be super awesome.
Do
But
that one more time, Dave. Do that one more time.
Yeah. What happened when I lost the hair, though?
is that where things fell apart?
I
Like,
think
is this-
that's what it was, really.
No. So how about we talk about a little bit about how we came to know each other, like how we met. Why don't you describe it?
Well, you stalked me for a while.
As every
That's a great
good,
way to start.
as every good guy should.
I like it.
Yeah, he showed up at my high school and was asking for me, and people were telling me, "Do you know this Dave guy? He's here at school looking for you." Yeah, that happened.
Like, were you
So-
high school age?
High school. I was 15 years
but
old.
were you high school age? Or were
Yeah,
you like
17.
Okay, you weren't like a 24-year-old.
No,
showing up being
no.
like,
That
"Is there
would've been
Marianne
weird."
here?"
Yes,
All right.
I was 15. He was 17.
Yeah, so I saw Marianne the first time. She was walking in front of Mike Hutchison Motors in Elmer.
Yeah.
And she was walking with a friend, and she was wearing her Valley Heights purple varsity jacket. And I was like, I need to know who that girl is. And so I figured out a way to find out who she was. and I got her number.
So
and-
how did you do this? It just sounds like
Right?
it's
You don't
gonna
want
be
to know.
interesting.
You don't want to know.
No, I totally do want to know.
Okay, so I had a super crush on a girl at the Old Colony Church,
Oh shoot.
and so that didn't work out. And so I figured there's a good way to kind
I was the
of give
backup
her a
plan.
dig.
It's fine. It's fine.
I was going to kind of give her a dig. I'm like, hey, do you know that Marianne girl? Hey, can you give me her number? And so she ended up giving it to me. But it ended up that Marianne was part of a youth group in Houghton Center. And the EMMC churches often would rent the skate arena in Simcoe, the
Roller
Odd.
skating.
The odd.
Yeah, AUD, Odd. And so I just figured, you know what? I'm going to show up, surprise her, and introduce myself and see how it goes.
And with that, he approached me as a stranger. Hey, I'm Dave. Would you like a Sprite? And so he bought me a Sprite that he was also going to share with me and I don't like sharing
straws?
drinks. No, one straw. But the crazy part was after he offered me this drink, he offered me alone to jump in a car with 3 of his friends. Yes, let me jump in a stranger's car with 3 of your friends at 15 years old.
Yeah, it was party time, babe.
I did not. My mother taught me well. I did not.
You know, it's interesting though, and I think everybody watching, if you're like a teenager and you're like, I'm never gonna find anyone, we can all say if Dave managed, right?
Yeah. One straw. You know?
I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
environmental of you.
Yeah, it was.
Yes.
It was.
It was for
Do
the
you
turtles.
not love turtles at all?
Yes, it was for
Seriously?
the turtles.
So no, I was going out on a limb. I didn't. This is the first time really breaking through. I was trying to break through, and you know, other girls. It wasn't working out with other girls, and Marianne was
Apparently a sucker.
no, and she, yeah. I was just struck with how cute she was, and so yeah, I went on a limb.
Okay, so what again? So let's try again with the first question. Why did you say yes?
Why did I say yes? Well, he did come to my house. The hair. It was the hair. Yes, it was the hair. He did find my house. I had invited him over, or he wanted to come over. I'm not sure if
No, you invited me over.
And I was still very leery about him. So
Does
I
she know she invited you? Or is
yes,
this one of those
I think
She invited
yeah.
me.
It was legit. I did probably invite him, but I was still very leery about him because my mom told me not to talk to strangers, and you know, I was great and listened. And so he did find my house. He didn't find my home right away, so he stopped at all the neighbors down the street and said, "Do you know where Marianne Miller lives?
I was
This is
gonna
a
find
true
this
story."
woman.
And so I was leery. So I had 2 of my other male friends at my house waiting because if he was going to be a creep, I was going to be safe. And then he kind of charmed me that day, and I think that's where
Yeah.
I thought he would be safe enough to hang out with sometimes, and we were good.
Yeah.
He was a charmer.
Was it?
So my parents didn't want me dating anybody because I was 15 years old, and I had some little boyfriends, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
kid things, and they were all, you know, not Mennonite. And so when Dave popped up in the driveway and opened the door, my mom was like, I love him. He's so nice. And so, yeah, there was
I knew how to push the buttons though.
Yeah,
Like I think the
absolutely.
first visit, I let them know who my mom was, who my grandpa was.
yeah,
I
oh
knew
yeah,
how to do the
and
whole
they were
game.
hooked. They were
And I
absolutely
think
hooked.
I even talked a little German
He
to
did,
them.
and I was like, oh. So yeah, he roped my parents in real quick, and so they let me date at 15.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we had a few more youth events. This is January 6th, 1995. We went on our first date.
Yeah.
Wow. So what was the first date?
Oh, he drove me into the ditch. Hey, let's go somewhere. All right. I think this guy's cool. I think he's all right. I don't need a chaperone. I don't need a friend. Drove me into the ditch. 5 minutes into the date.
I've literally heard of running out of gas. Like I've
No,
heard of that, but
in
the ditch
the
seems a
ditch.
little extreme.
In the
All right.
ditch, Culloden Road and Highway 3, yeah.
Oh no.
My uncle's Ford Temple. Yeah.
I screamed. He laughed.
You guys were okay, obviously.
Yeah,
So-
everything's
Yeah,
cool.
we were fine. It was
That's when you lost
So-
his hair.
yes.
So I got on the road. We proceeded with our date. We went to Lucky Garden in St. Thomas.
And I didn't like Chinese food, but he took me to a Chinese
So
place.
she had chicken balls and French fries.
Yep.
And then we went bowling.
And I didn't bowl. So I didn't bowl. I don't like bowling.
So
The gross shoes sharing, yeah. I didn't bowl.
So needless to say, it was a great first date.
You thought it was wonderful.
Yeah. So
And I
yeah.
was smitten. I was young. I thought, oh, this guy is so great.
He's so great. He knows nothing about
He
me.
knows nothing
Can't
about
drive.
me.
It's good. It's really good.
Yeah.
I
So
almost died.
I'd say he's dated a couple years.
Yeah.
dated a couple of years. So we dated a couple of years, and so you like to talk about when we first realized that our marriage was going sideways was probably when we started dating.
Yeah. I think the fourth probably month in our relationship of dating, we had broken up, gotten back together. We broke up 100 times while dating. Yeah. So those were never fun times. Usually the times were pretty trivial. I would say most of the times we broke up were over stupid things like Friends night and Seinfeld night that he couldn't give up with watching with his friends. So he would ditch me for his friends to watch Seinfeld and Friends. That was awesome.
Yeah, I figured,
Tuesday and Thursday nights were not Dave and Marianne nights, no matter what.
but Sunday, Monday,
Like, that's a
Wednesday,
lot of days.
Friday,
You gave a lot
Saturday.
of days.
Oh,
Steph.
yeah.
There's lots of days.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, because often with dating, you don't, like, you're just like, whatever, we're just dating. But so what made you guys continue on? Like, if you guys were breaking up back and forth,
know.
like, what was it that?
That's a very good question. I don't know what. So if I look back at it, I genuinely enjoyed being with Marianne, and I learned about relationship through the culture. I didn't necessarily learn relationship by figures in my life. I learned more relationship from culture, and so like I was having rock and rollers tell me how to deal with relationship, and I thought I was a rock and roller, I guess, and so yeah, that's how I handled our relationship, and I wanted to party, and I wanted a girlfriend too, and those two conflicted.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think for me, we got back together all those times over and over and over again because I didn't want to experience another loss in my life. I didn't want to be feeling like I failed at something. I didn't like to fail at things. And even as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old teenager, I really felt like I loved him. And so, I don't know, getting back together was always in the back of my mind every time we broke up. Those silly times.
Yeah, we'd get mad at each other, and but we'd still always leave a door open.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because at that age, I'm assuming none of you, I mean, you both wouldn't have been able to articulate what was happening,
No.
right? But it's interesting now looking back, like, and that's one of the things when you go into a relationship, you don't think that your childhood and your parents and all that is going to impact your relationships as much as it does, right? Like even that whole idea of, you turn out to be like your dad or you turn out to be like your mom, even though you say you're never going to be, I'm never going to be like dad, I'm never going to, and then because that's all you know. Right. And so it's just interesting because obviously now that we've kind of heard a lot about your past, I mean, I don't know much about your past, but you bring that all into this mix of hormones and emotions, and those teenage years are hard anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, okay. So you guys survived that.
Yeah, we
How
did.
many years of that before?
So that's not the end of the story, though.
Okay.
So like I was not a good boyfriend. So probably 2 years into the relationship, like you hit the nail on the head with the timing, is 2 years into the relationship, we had one of those times where we had a fight, and I left, and I thought it was truly over, and so if you're partying all the time,
Right.
you go to the next party, and what happens? Well, hey, you meet different girls, and so that's what ended up happening. I ended up not being faithful to Marianne during our dating time, and yeah, then so I hate to use a Ross line, but I thought we were on a break.
First thing that came to my
Yeah,
mind.
I know. The whole time.
I'm like,
Me too.
Friends, Thursday night.
Yeah.
You were on a break.
Yeah, and so yeah, that happened, and yeah, so, but we always left the door open, and so the door was open, and we started communicating again.
So what drove you to that? Like, and I know that maybe we're getting deeper than we can on a normal podcast, but like, how do you end up there? Because you loved Marianne.
Oh yeah,
And because I think is it just is guys' ability to detach? Is that what it is? Like our ability to detach, or is it just that we kind of get struck up in the moment, or because it just seems like we make decisions sometimes, and you look back and you go, "I'm an idiot," but then kind of like, how do you get there? Like,
So I think it was a lot of that. Like it was a lot of male bravado. It was a lot of I want to be cool, get caught up in the moment. And I was a charming guy. Like I knew how to press the buttons, and so it just ended up happening. I don't think it was one of those things where I intentionally went out and said, "Hey, this is what's going to happen." Right. But just knowing where Marianne and I were at that time, it just kind of naturally progressed, and so that happened. We left.
This
the door.
is while you were still dating.
Yes, while we're still dating. So that happened. And we got back together, and I kept it a secret for a long time. Kept it a secret for at least a year, and was able to keep it down on the down low for at least a year. And all of a sudden, it came out, and it actually came out after I proposed for marriage. So I proposed for I asked Marianne to marry me in Fort Stanley in the year 1998, and it was probably it would have been 97, and in the summer on the beach, and so I proposed, and then the following April, word got out somehow, don't know how, that I'd been unfaithful, and we called off the wedding.
I called off the wedding.
Yeah, well, understandably. And but we had already bought a house too. And so I remember a vivid picture of us sitting in the our living room, the living room of our house, no furniture, and just begging Marianne, to still get married. And we had initially set our wedding for April of 1999. And I don't know if through the course of this, we actually moved the date up. I don't know why. And so she was gracious. She expressed forgiveness at the time, and we moved forward. But it took, I begged, and we saw it for a good day.
So how did you navigate that?
At the time, I think for me, it was devastating. I remember thinking, oh, I'm not going to marry this man. I love him. I've done so much. We have a house. I was thinking little details like our invitations are sent. We can't cancel the wedding because our invitations are sent. We can't cancel the wedding because, my parents have already paid for all of these things, and all of those little trivial things were making me think, yeah, I need to do this. And we went along with it. But I do realize now as a mature adult that I feel like I should not have moved forward. I was definitely not ready to be in a relationship where in the back of my mind, I was always wondering, is Dave going to be faithful? Has it happened more than once? He's late home from work. Where is he? And I wasn't ready for that challenge. I wish I would have waited a little bit to work through some of these things that Dave and I had gone through. And I had a childhood of a lot of a lot of hurt from men, and I was abused by other people in my life. And so for me, this was just another one of those guys that has, another notch in the belt. I've been hurt by another man. But in trying to forgive Dave and get through it, I felt like if I stayed and I forgave him and we got married, it wasn't real hurt because I'm choosing to not let it be hurt and we're just going to move on with our lives and it will be great. And so for me, I definitely shouldn't have moved forward as quick as I did because we didn't have great healing. We didn't have a counselor.
We weren't even open about it.
No, we weren't. So word had gotten out that he was not faithful, but in our circles and our families, people didn't know that. I didn't want to go tell the world, hey,
Right.
Dave was unfaithful. I protected him from that, and I'm not sure why, because all of our family and friends were kind of pushing us to keep going with the wedding. They hadn't really known why we didn't want to, and I wanted to protect him for some reason, and so we did. We did get married early, and I think from there, that's where our roller coaster of a marriage just.
Yeah, we never told anybody what was going on. Like, I don't think Marianne's parents knew at all.
No.
what was happening. My mom definitely.
My
didn't know.
parents knew. I told my mom and dad.
Okay, and so but we didn't ask for any advice from anybody. We didn't sit in the council of somebody to say, hey,
No.
look, you guys got to really rethink this, or you guys need to explore these different things and provide some healing. We never sought that out.
Well, because we made it look like things were just fine in front of people.
You grew up in a church background, correct?
Yeah, I did.
Does that play an extra level into this where you feel like you have to forgive, you have no choice, and if you don't, you're going to look not Christian? Like, does that play into that?
It definitely did, but I think my parents would have been great either way. If I would have wanted to leave Dave or not married him, they would have supported me either way. But in the Christian circle, for sure, you are taught to forgive, and I wanted to forgive because I loved him.
Right.
I really wanted to marry him, but I just really wish there would have been some kind of person, that gem in the congregation that would have seen pain and hurt that maybe we weren't showing and approached me and kind of had a sit down with me and said, hey, you don't have to do this.
Yeah, really, really. If I think about it, I wish somebody would have just called us out on our BS, like literally that way, like just to say, like, what you guys are putting out is not what the reality is, and that takes some assumption,
Right.
and so we shouldn't always assume everything is just tickety-boo for everybody.
Right. Well, I was thinking because as pastors, we officiate a bunch of weddings, and so it's one of those things where it's hard to sometimes know where that line is. So it's interesting to hear you guys say that because I haven't done one that I'm really concerned about, but certainly have seen relationships where you kind of go, oh. But it's interesting. So you guys, do you know how you would have responded at the time? Like, I mean, I know we're guessing here, but because I think that's one of the concerns. Like, you don't want to walk up and be the reason somebody split up, but I think people often find themselves in that place where they're kind of like, I can see something's wrong, but I don't know if do I have the authority to walk in and say something or should I shut my mouth? But you guys are saying you wish somebody, obviously with compassion. I mean, we're assuming the person's a nice person, but.
Yeah, Dave didn't grow up in a Christian home like I did as much. And so for him, his Christian walk was a lot different than mine. I had grown up in a Christian home. I was a Sunday school teacher. My parents spoke and preached the Bible to me really well. And I almost think that if somebody at that time would have said something to me, I might have let the door open in just a crack, but I was also super stubborn and way smarter than everybody else because I was 15 and 16, that I'm not sure I would have, it would have had to be the right person.
Right.
Somebody I was already close to, someone that I looked up to. It couldn't be just a stranger pointing fingers at me.
Yeah, somebody meaningful in their life.
And I don't think if somebody approached you, I'm not sure that you would have.
Yeah, but so actually, we got married in the Mount Salem Church.
Mm-hmm.
Wilbert Friesen did our wedding, and we were able to keep it a secret from him. And Marianne helped protect me. And I'm just thinking about it now, how much she did. And it blows my mind.
Right.
And Dave and I were talking about this just last night. I definitely wasn't forthcoming during our marriage counseling. I was Miss Sunshine and Roses on paper in conversation with Wilbert because I knew if I was going to, be too honest, he might say you can't get married, and being married was the goal. And so I think marriage counseling should be after maybe a year of marriage when the real stuff hits.
Interesting. Because I'm going through it right now with a couple of couples, and I've often thought, like, it's kind of like when the teacher explains something to you at school, it all makes sense. Then you get home and you're like, I have no idea what actually, like, how do you do this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like an interview. You want to impress. You want to have the right answers. And I would hope that most people are honest in their marriage counseling. But for Dave and I, wow, our story would have looked very different if we were honest.
Yeah, if somebody would have called us out.
But do you feel, and because now in hindsight, obviously you guys can see this. Do you feel at the time though, because you wanted to forgive, do you feel like you had? Do you feel like you had? Because I feel like that's sometimes the way we go. We're like, no, but I did forgive, or I did grieve, or I did whatever that thing is, and the other people around are going, but you didn't. But did you feel like you had dealt with this? Because now when you guys explain it, I mean, I'm like, why did you get married? What? But at the time, obviously, that wasn't what you guys thought, right?
I know this is part of a story that I haven't shared much either, but I was that 4-year-old kid that, asked Jesus into her heart and grew up in church. I'm a Christian. After we had gotten married, split up, only getting back together, I was probably 21 years old, where I remember begging God for salvation. And I think only at that point did I really get saved. I carried out the motions as a Christian growing up, but I didn't have a relationship with God. I never feared God and the consequences of hurting him. I feared, hurting my parents, disobeying my parents, hurting the church, my reputation with the church. But it wasn't, any of the things that I ever did was never because of the Holy Spirit moving in me and my relationship with God. So when we got back together, I think I was 21 or 22. That's when I feel like I had that's when I was saved. And so when you ask me if I forgave Dave back then, I forgave him as a non-Christian. I wasn't walking with Jesus. I wasn't living for Christ. So that kind of forgiveness is very different than a forgiveness of a child of God.
Right, because for us in faith, forgiveness becomes a core of almost everything. And I think so if you guys are watching and you're like, well, I'm not a Christian. Well, there's something about the core of when God forgives you for everything.
Yeah.
And when you come to a place where you realize that God could punish you and probably should punish you and forgives you, that opens an avenue for you to forgive that you can't have. It's the same thing with God's love. And I think that's, for us in faith, we're kind of like, well, that's why that's so essential. And I think people outside of the church often don't see that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it is. And
It
because when you come face to face with God and you're kind of like, man, I have messed up so much. And he's like, I forgive you. Then you leave there going, okay, well, I can learn to forgive in a more profound way. Absolutely. So timelines here a little bit. Okay, so you guys broke up again after marriage. So
I can pick up the story again.
Okay.
So we had the forgiveness and the decision to move the wedding up. Got married.
So you guys moved up even.
So we were going to get married in 1999, April of 1999, and we moved the wedding up to November 28th, 1998. We thought it was going to solve problems. I don't know how that was going to solve problems, but we did. That's what we did. So in 98, we get married, and so then we went on a really expensive honeymoon.
Fought all week long?
Yeah, we fought on our honeymoon.
You guys were that couple.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Isn't that the movie? Or is
It
that a different
probably
movie?
is, yeah.
That is a movie. And we fought, got home, started to put things together, right? And went that way for a bit, and we're trying to put finances together. The natural marriage pressures come on. You got bills, you got finances.
Were you sorry, just to pause for a second. Were you surprised that you didn't get along? Did this surprise you when you got
used to it.
Okay.
We were
Yeah.
almost used to it.
Yeah. So we're just living our life like we had been dating, and just arguing about nonsense, and also then the added pressures of marriage and trying to.
I didn't fold the
cohabitate.
clothes right.
Yeah, there's a story of her catching me unfolding my laundry and refolding it.
I had folded it all. He unfolded the laundry and refolded it so they were all the same size. And from that day on, Dave did the laundry, every stitch of laundry in our house.
True story.
So you grew up doing a lot of your own laundry, I take it.
Yes, starting there.
Yeah.
starting that day. So yeah, and I was a driven guy too. Like I was about making the buck. I had started at KML Windows in Cortland, and I worked within 5 years. I'd worked myself into the engineering department. I started there sweeping floors, and I was in the engineering department within 5 years.
Wow.
And so like I was driven, and I was going to learn what I needed to learn to make the next dollar. And so I did it, and I wanted her to follow suit. I wanted her to make the cash too, and but we had an idea of what marriage should be, and part of it was, we're going to have some kids, and she's going to stay at home and take care of those kids because she was clearly built to be a mom, and so yeah. After about 6 months, things started to get to the point where it was almost unbearable, and I think it would be unbearable, right? And so then we started. We actually, let's fix this. Let's hide some more things and let's go get baptized. And so we went and got baptized in June of '99, and yeah.
Then you guys did some youth stuff at our church because
Yeah,
I remember you guys being a super cool young couple. Like I'm trying to remember. I would have been 13, 14 at the time.
99.
And I have a story I remember about you, but you don't remember. So then I'm like, my memory sucks. So it's probably made up. It's something to do with you got like because we did a camp together.
Yeah, we went to camp together.
And you got like suntan lotion on your back, so it said "I love Marianne" or something. That okay, so it could be made up, but I know we've talked about this before, and you're like, I don't remember.
I don't remember that, but it sounds like a cool story.
It sounds like a great story. Were you guys even at that camp? I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, so I was at that camp. Marianne didn't go. I was concerted in making an effort to try and turn over a new leaf, as you could say. But Marianne wasn't on the same page with me at that time. And so yeah, we got baptized and got involved in the church. And then I remember, so that's 99. I remember distinctly, like we just, throughout the year, we just got more distant and more distant. I was telling Marianne the story just the other day. We were going to Marianne's parents' house on Christmas Eve. And for whatever reason, the horse had gotten loose on the road. It's a weird story, I know. Horse had gotten loose on the road, and we were driving her 1997 Ford Escort. And, no, it was probably an 87 Escort. But we almost hit the horse. Like we're like within inches of hitting the legs out and having the horse land on us. And it was a terrifying moment. And I wanted to console Marianne, and I couldn't. We had just gotten to a point where we were so distant that I couldn't even console her. And so, yeah, we were really, really distant at that point. Then we get into the year 2000. And
Can I ask you
we
a question, Dave?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're at the year 2000. Come back to there, but I want to ask you a question about. You guys have now twice said that as things were difficult, you guys then put another mask on and proceeded to do something that was like faith-driven that would make it better. So like, okay, it's not going well. We're going to get married sooner.
Yeah.
And now you're saying things aren't going well. Okay, now we're going to get baptized. Do you think, like looking back, can you see that as a consistent thing of like decisions people in faith circles do to try to mask real things that are going on? Like they put on another layer to pretend. Like, do you think that's still going on? And
Yeah, we have seen it.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I think as much as the church community is a good community, it also has some things in it that can be hurtful.
Because we look at the outside world and we go, "Oh, that person's just turning to alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that person, they're doing drugs." But inside our circle, they're going to get baptized to feel better about or to try to make it better.
Yeah. Yeah. We need the community around us. We definitely need the community around us, but we were handling it in the wrong way.
I was going to say, because the other flip side of that would be, was it a desperate attempt that maybe if I do this, God will make this better?
I definitely felt that way. I grew up in a very Christian home, and my mom and dad were perfect, and they loved each other and they had a great relationship. So I knew what a good relationship looked like, and part of that relationship was they were involved in church. If the doors were open on a Sunday morning, my butt was at church, and I thought, maybe that's the ticket. That's why mom and dad got along so well. Because, they were involved in church and we weren't. So I think you're right a little bit there.
I just wonder if that's part of the disillusionment people feel because they're like, I am following God and it still didn't work.
Yeah. So I think it's equal parts both. Like on one hand, we're putting on a mask. On the other hand, we're just trying to be imitators of what we think is right.
Yeah.
Right. Because clearly, if you look back at your story, and the fact that you guys are still together today, obviously there's a lot of determination to make this thing work. But I think desperate times, desperate measures. Like I feel like there's a bit of that of maybe this is, we would say, it's spiritual warfare or whatever your term you want to put in. Well, if I get baptized, they'll fix it. Some of the stuff just doesn't get fixed.
Yeah. So so we did that. We did those things, and I think ultimately though, like there's a greater story that was unfolding. Yeah. Despite regardless of what we were doing, like there was a greater story unfolding, and so I remember I got a new job in 2000 in the year 2000 February. I announced it to Marianne on Valentine's Day. Hey, babe, I got a new job, more money. Right on, right? And she was pretty excited. And then like a few days later, I got home. We had been fighting, probably something to do with laundry again.
It was way more extreme than laundry.
Probably. And Marianne went in the bedroom, took my clothes out of my drawers, threw it in a laundry basket, and said, "Go." And I said, "Yeah, I think I'll do that."
Yeah, he wasn't. He happily left.
I grabbed the basket and I went to my buddy's house. I had maintained my relationships with my friends and was seeing them on a regular basis, and so I had an easy escape. Yeah. And so I left.
I wonder what it would have looked like if that friend would have said, "Hey, get your butt back at home."
Would you have taken me back?
I'm not sure.
Well, and I wonder, because if we're going to go down a wandering train anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder, because your friends at some point would have noticed something's off.
We were really great, Albert.
Well, I know you were really great.
We were really great at hiding things.
And I guess, but that would be the question. Were you that good that nobody noticed? Or
Maybe.
Were there indications? Because typically with humans, if we're close, you can kind of sense. Even when you have a guy's night out, you can sense. There's only so much faking you can do when you get to know a person long enough that even if they're smiling, you're like, eh. Yeah. And so I wonder if some of this goes into, because I really like what you were saying there, because there is that piece of I learned it in college years ago, and this is very few things I remember from there, but they were talking about triangulation.
You went to college?
Yeah. You have no idea. I didn't do well, but I was there. Shut up. But they talk about the idea of triangulation of marriage, and so you create these people around you that end up pulling you away from marriage instead of towards it. Because every time you go to your mom or your brother or whoever and say, "Hey, Dave sucks," they just reaffirm it. They're like, "Yeah, you're right. He does suck. Like his hair's falling out. He's pathetic. He's a loser."
Bald, yeah.
Right? And all that does is that pulls you apart instead of doing exactly that, where you listen, you say, "Yeah, you're right. That must be hard. Have you guys tried A or have you tried B?" And pushing them back instead of saying, "Hey, yeah, you're right. She sucks. Let's leave."
Yeah. Oh, you're 100% right. Because I remember when we finally did split up, I told my parents, Dave and I are finally over. And they were the exact opposite of what I had envisioned. They were concerning for Dave. They, wanted us to reunify if it was possible. And they would not say a bad thing about him. And I thought, this isn't fair. Right. You're my parents.
Right. You're my side.
Yeah, you need to be taking up my side.
Wow.
And then I find out that they would still have him over for dinner,
Really?
Make him his favorite meals. And I hated it at the time. But I am so thankful for it now. Reunification was made so much easier because of that. Right. Mom and Dad didn't hate him. I told him everything he did. And mom and dad showed him a love like he didn't deserve and I didn't deserve. But when we got back together, it was amazing because they didn't have that judgment towards him.
Yeah.
They had forgiven him. Getting back together was a lot easier on that end because there really wasn't very many people that were rooting for us.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And we were separated for 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
We were separated for 8 months and a lot of stuff happened in 8 months.
Right.
A lot
Yeah,
of
we
craziness.
messed up a lot.
Yeah.
So just curious, what's that feel like walking into her parents' place during this? I mean, what are you experiencing there?
Well,
Roast beef and mashed potatoes is what he was experiencing.
I love you, babe.
I know.
Awesome.
No, so some of it was like, check this out. Like this is like
Yeah.
she's gonna love this.
Yeah.
Really, it was like I was a little bit like that, but also at the same time, I agree with that sentiment. Like, yeah, they showed me really good love. So it was cool.
But during that time, I drew away from them
Mm.
because now I'm the piece that's not getting back together with him.
Right.
So I didn't see my parents for, I want to say 2 or 3 months. Didn't speak to them.
Wow.
Nothing. That was a hard time.
Yeah, that was a real hard time. And she had other things going on, and so she had moved to London. Had a whole different community that she was together with there. I had my own community, and so we went back and forth with like, I'd call her up one day and say, "Babe, like I'm just dying. I want to see you. I want to get back together. I want to work this out." And she'd be like, "No way, man. I'm having a good time." And then like a month later, she'd call me and say, "Hey, Dave, let's get together. Like we need to talk." And I'd say, "No way. Too bad. I'm having a good time." And so we did that for 8 months. And we went back and forth. Like we vacillated a lot on us getting back together.
And we definitely weren't faithful during that time. Like we were seeing other people and those relationships were very trivial. It was, just a void to fill. But even that felt better than the idea of having to forgive and getting back together at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I did not hang out with any Christians during that time because Christians made me feel a little bit guilty.
Right.
We had, in my experience, I didn't have a lot of Christian people approach me and say, "Hey, you're going through a rough time. I see you and Dave are, separated. What's going on? Is there any way we can help?" On my end, and I'm not sure if it was because I was female and everybody knew that I wasn't faithful, I felt a lot of judgment from the church. I felt a lot of judgment from most Christians in the church. I remember walking...
Our circles specifically.
Our circles, for sure. I remember walking in Elmer, we're still separated, and someone from church that, used to say hi to us every once in a while, walked by me, and I had said hi, and she turned her head to make it very apparent that she was not going to say hi to someone that was separated and unfaithful, and this person made me feel really trashy.
Wow.
And I was living a trashy life. And that happened over and over again. And I don't know, I feel like Dave, I'm not sure if it's just because people didn't know how trashy he was. They were kind of more open to talking to him and saying, "Hey, is there anything we can do?" But for me, it was a lot of condemnation.
Yeah.
And
I didn't help. I made that worse, actually. I
Yeah.
think I fed into. I was good at pushing the blame off.
yeah, people knew about my trashy time, but didn't know much about Dave's trashier time.
Well, and it's interesting because if people who don't know the church are listening, there's kind of like the
What does
hypocrisy
that
there is
mean?
insane.
Yeah, it is.
Because
yeah.
we just literally went through a thing where you talked about the forgiveness of Christians
Yeah.
being so much more profound because of the grace we get from God.
Right.
And then we do this to each other. And we've talked so much in the church about this. And we suck at forgiving. We actually suck at grace.
I really do too. I do
Like-
too. I've done this to people.
Well, and that's where I think your statement is so profound, that you would choose to do things that you knew were wrong, you knew weren't going to be good for you, but it was still easier than forgiving. And I think forgiveness, we make it always sound so easy, right? Just forgive.
It's not.
It's so simple.
Truly
Just forgive.
forgiving, yeah.
And it's hard. I think it's a process. I think it's a lifelong journey, I would imagine, with some of this stuff, because it comes back up.
Mm-hmm.
And you still have to choose to forgive. You have to choose to live in that, right? And it's hard,
But I think that I distanced myself from family and everybody, in the Christian community that we had been a part of. I was living in London. I wasn't seeing anybody. I saw my brother, I think, and out of everybody, I cut everybody off because it was so much easier to hang out with the people that were condoning my life
right.
than to be condemned on the street, or for people to point fingers, or for me to visit Elmer and hear whispering of how trashy of a person I was, instead of, hey, I wonder how she's doing, because it wasn't like that for me.
And it's sad. I've heard this a few times in the last couple of years about people specifically in Elmer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the ugly side of a small town.
Yeah, it's sad.
But
But I think things are, our story changed. So I feel, there's good news.
Yeah, and that's. So we got back together in October of 2000.
Yeah, because we were going, like he said before, we were going back and forth. He wanted to get back together. I'm like, no way. And then I had these urges. Hey, Dave, you want to? No way. So it was back and forth. If one of us would have just been a little less stubborn.
And that's what it took.
And it did take that.
Yeah. So I called her up one day. So I called her up one day and I said, hey, babe, let's get back together. And she's like, no way, I'm having a good time. And I remember that's when we had phones on the wall. Remember that? I remember.
Did you just put a quarter in it? Or?
No. So I remember hanging up the phone and just like leaning against the wall and falling in tears and just saying, God, if you can't pull this together, I'm done. I remember telling a buddy, this is pretty crass to say, but I remember telling a buddy, I'm just gonna cut my losses. I'm just gonna move on. And another time, I get together with Pastor Jake Friesen from the Elmer MMC, and I said, hey, my marriage is in down the tubes, and what should I do? And he's like, just give it one more try. Just give it one more try. And that was huge, for him to be able to say that to me. I think we wouldn't be here if he hadn't said, if he would have given me all these things to, if he would have given me other options to do, that's all he had to say to me. And he didn't have any other wise words of wisdom. He just said one more time. And so I did one more time. And and that's when her heart was soft towards me. We got together she was living in London on Baseline Road. And I met her at a Tim Hortons close to Baseline Road. And we had coffee. I remember that being a great time. And we got some things off of our chest. And it still wasn't 100%, so I was going to go, to Alberta, figure things out. And I was probably going to try. I was going to try and find a job in Lacrete, Alberta. And but then we came back. My mom and I went. We came back, and Marianne picked me up at the airport, and we've been together ever since. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so yeah, a lot of work to get to staying together.
So what are some of those things? Because I think this is the hope for most couples, at least. Whenever I've officiated a wedding, nobody's like, man, I hope we divorce in a couple of years. I'm hoping I get at least good 5. They all want to be that couple. Well, so what are some of those tangible, practical things that you guys can kind of look on and go, here's some decisions that we made that helped?
The back and forthness was huge for us, but I wish so badly that I would have just looked on our marriage as something precious, not driven by fear and my experiences with not being able to trust men, and just really fully tried our very best to get back together. I was always on the fence. always on the fence. This isn't going to work. If I go back, it's not going to work. So it's easier for me not to go back and not feel that hurt again than it is to go back and try.
Yeah.
And so
that first year, we kind of knew what had happened during the time that we had been split up, but we never verbalized the things that we had done, and we kind of just made this. We kind of just looked at each other and said, "Hey, like this year sucked," and both just acknowledged, "Yeah, it has," and we forgave fully.
yeah, I am not an easy forgiver back in the day. If you hurt me, boy, you're totally done. We're done. And so forgiveness wasn't very easy for me. And it was supernatural. That's the only way I can explain it. We had begged God for healing in our marriage, and he so suddenly flipped the quarter over and was like, "Yep, I've got this. You're trusting in me. I'm going to help you." And we had that conversation of what you all did and what I all did to kind of clear the air.
But we never got into detail.
No, but I didn't have that feeling every day of, oh, what's Dave doing? Why is he late from work? Those feelings that I had before. It was a different trust, and it was so different for me. And that's, again, where I had this calling out to Jesus. And I'm like, Jesus, I'm a sinner. I need you. If this is going to work, I can't do this on my own strength. And that's where my salvation came very clear to me. And I think without that, we wouldn't be here, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's very difficult for two people that love Jesus like crazy and live for him to hate each other. So I wish we would have started our relationship off with a strong faith first individually and then come together, but it wasn't the cards that we...
Yeah, just wasn't what we had, the story that we had. Yeah, so like we never talked about that stuff. Like we never got it all on the table, but I kind of assumed the worst. I assumed the worst, and I said, you know what, I'm going to move on. I mean... We did talk about it, but we didn't get into the details. And so when it came to the details, I assumed the worst, and I just chose to forgive.
Yeah, and I don't think I would have wanted to know the deep, dark details because they would have haunted me in the night.
Right.
And same with him.
Yeah, same here. And I think that's why we left it. This is actually the first time that we're ever talking about this. Like you and I sharing it with anybody else other than...
Yeah, we don't talk about it very openly, but I know that it's a story of resolution by
the grace of God.
By the grace of God.
Yeah, and so we got back together, and we knew if we were going to do this, we needed a community. And so we started attending a church, and we went back to Marianne's parents' church because that was something that was stable in our life. We started attending there, and
that was hard.
Yeah,
I got a lot of, there's a lot of people still talking about, what Marianne
just throwing a little
did.
shade.
Yeah, you can't hang out with her because what she did.
Yeah.
And I don't think intentionally sometimes, and sometimes it was probably not even there, but I thought it was.
So the church was practicing social distancing?
Social distancing.
Before-
That's what it was.
Before it was popular.
And masking by the sounds of it.
Yeah. And like I said, a lot of it could have been me just thinking
Yep.
that people were talking about me when I walked in a room, and maybe they weren't, but that's the vibe I was getting at the time.
Yeah, but we started going to the church, and we got into a small group we started a small group with a bunch of young married couples, and that was really where the healing started. We were able to talk about some of the stuff that marriages face, and we worked through a lot of things together, and that was a really precious time for us. But then we had another challenge come along in our marriage. We figured, we'd get this thing figured out, and then we'd start having babies and get it all put right? And that didn't happen. So we went, another 2 or 3 years trying to have kids, and it wasn't working. And yeah, there's a lot of things that come along with that, fertility needles and different things came along. And so Marianne's mental health was declining because of the situation that infertility brought along.
Being in situations where other children were, I didn't want to hang out with people that had kids. I had no friends left because I had abandoned them all because it was too hard to be around them, seeing them with all their babies that they didn't even try having. And, it was very hard to be around people with little kids when you desired so badly.
Yeah, so we just hung out with teenagers.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we led youth.
It's one of those things that only over the last couple of years, I think I've started to realize how much pain and grief there is in that. Because you just didn't know, like if you don't know, and I think it's one of those things that, so we've tried as a church sharing some of those stories because I would never have known. Because I know, and I'm sure I have hurt people by some of my off. Well, just go adopt or just go foster. Like just
fostering's easy,
right? Oh, goodness, yeah, piece of cake. Ask my kids. Everything's perfect. Everything's fine. It's fine, right? But I think it's one of those again. There's a compassion piece where I don't know. I think in general as a culture we lack empathy towards each other, and I think that plays out in some of these things, and it does in the way we treat each other, but also that's hard. So you guys went through a lot.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. And we did. We still do.
It just brings me back to Mother's Days as a person that couldn't have kids. And, the churches would try really hard. It's Mother's Day. Let's give a rose to all the moms sitting in the congregation. But then there'd always be that, designated kid that goes to give a rose to the moms that can't have kids and said, here's a rose. And I hated Mother's Day services. I didn't go to church on Mother's Day hardly ever after that. It wasn't the church wasn't hurting me, but I just felt everything was hurting me on Mother's Day.
Yeah.
But those times were hard.
Yeah. So, so it's during this time that Marianne and I had a tremendous transformation. God was doing a huge work in us. We were involved in church. We were having an impactful youth. What I'd like to think was an impactful youth, and we were leading in church and doing all that kind of stuff. And so things were put together. And really, we had a really I would say from the year 2002 to the year 2005, we had seen some miraculous things happen, not only in our relationship, but just with people around us. And so we were at the same time as we were struggling with the infertility, we were also seeing some good things happen. And so it was
and we were having a good time.
Yeah.
We were traveling. We were doing all this,
Yeah. Marianne was making money at this point. She was making a lot of money, and I was making a lot of money. And so we
finally weren't poor.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, we were having a good time eating out every day. It was a great time. And then,
so you guys could go in restaurants?
Yeah. Like every night.
When was this? Sorry.
We barely had phones back then. I think I had a pager, maybe. Yeah. So, God did a huge work in us, and we have to really give him credit for changing us, like changing our hearts, changing our minds, and opening doors that we had never seen open before. And so, God did a big work in us. And then, probably February 2005, we had somebody come and knock on our door and said, "Hey, we know somebody that's having a baby, and we're wondering if you'd like to adopt." You know what? Actually, we need to take a step back.
Okay.
Because we had actually wanted to be foster parents in 2003.
Right.
We wanted to be foster parents in 2003. And CAS took one look at us and said, "There's no way. You guys."
And the reason for it is because we didn't want a child that would potentially go away. Yeah. So we had this box, and I met Marnie Merritt. She's still my great friend today. Fostering in Elgin County is, the hope is that the child goes back to biological family, and I understand that now. But when we were in that stage of wanting a child, really bad, I told Marnie, no, we only want kids that will stay. And St. Thomas didn't have a program like that, just adopting. So we got denied.
Yeah, and really, we weren't there yet.
Yeah.
We weren't ready for not only the loss, but what it takes to foster and adopt. And so yeah, we were heartbroken. We were heartbroken at that, and that really hurt. Meanwhile,
I think we need to reset. So we'll be back 2 minutes. All right, so we're back. So we have been talking about marriage and stuff, and we just left off on foster care. Basically, because we don't have enough money for technology to have enough SD cards. So if you're looking to sponsor podcasts, just kidding. So you guys just got turned down for foster care. So where do we go from there?
Got turned down for foster care and really try to make sense of this. Like, we still want to have a family. So yeah, we started hanging out with teenagers. We started leading youth. Youth was a really good thing. We had a lot of fun doing it. And yeah, we adopted a little boy, a beautiful little boy, and started to make a family. And I gotta say, like, adopting a boy was another huge change for us. He was such a good boy, and Marianne just like she was an amazing mom, just an amazing mom. And I knew God had made her to be a mom. Like, she was just built for it, and she was so good. And so we had gone through the adoption process and adopting little guy, and so we figured, hey, you know what? We knew the whole fostering thing was still an option, so we went back to CIS and said, hey, what do you think now? Could we be foster parents now? And so yeah.
And then they said, actually, you're not even done your fostering course. Here's 2 kids.
Yeah, so we did the fostering course,
Yeah.
and before it was done, yeah, they're like, hey, here's some kids that I think would be a good fit for you. And yeah, they came in and moved in, and the rest is history. Like, it's we've got an amazing family. So we've over the course of from 2005 till now, we had fostered 21 kids.
Wow.
Yeah, and of those 21 kids, 7 of them came to live with us and get adopted by us, and so we've got 8 kids in total. And yeah, we're living our best life.
Yeah.
You beat us by 1. I
Yeah.
didn't realize the math was off there, so we'll work on that. We'll
Yeah,
see what
you
we can do.
should. Yeah.
But anyways, side note, competitive nature coming out here.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I want to get back to, are you guys good with that?
Yeah.
We're good, okay. You kind of look like you're going to say something. So.
No.
All right, get back to some of the lessons you guys learned through it and kind of what you guys would say now to couples who are struggling. And not just newly marrieds. I mean, it happens statistically in different phases. Year 3, year 7, year 15. They're all pretty key things. Even when the kids leave the home, parents struggle. So there's lots of different times that parents struggle. And it's just parents, I guess, married couples. What would you guys say are some of the keys that you've learned? What would you want to say to them having gone through what you've gone through?
That's crazy. What would you say, Marianne?
I would beg and plead, if your relationship is healthy, if in the sense of there isn't abuse, sexual, emotional, if healthy reunification can happen, fight for your marriage. I often think about what my life would be had we not given it this last,
This is one last shot.
fight. What we wouldn't have now. We have the best relationship we've ever had over the last, 20 years. It's been a blast. We are tight. We don't fight. We used to fight about everything, and now we don't fight about anything. And it's probably not a good thing, but we don't have
We
time.
get annoyed, just like anybody,
Yeah.
right? But we don't fight. Like we wouldn't let our annoyances get to a point of
And I
fighting.
think oftentimes people that are split up or, are thinking about divorce, like Dave and I had these back and forth moments where he wanted to, fix a marriage and I didn't, and then back and forth. Stop being stubborn. if you guys were both fighting at the same time for something really beautiful, imagine the outcome. If we would have stopped the back and forthness so long ago.
I shared this recently. I said, you wouldn't believe the difference that 5 words can make. Hey, you might be right, or I might be wrong. Like those things, like just being able to have that grace and acknowledging, hey, I don't have to fight through this. Let's just call it good and move on.
And two, I think the people you hang out with when you're in a situation where you don't like your husband or you don't like your wife, man, it was really easy to hate Dave when I was hanging out with people that were they didn't care about my marriage.
They were indifferent to it.
Yeah, they were very indifferent and encouraging me to get a divorce, and it's fine, just get a divorce. There'll be another guy out there for you, and those times it felt very easy to just be distant from Dave. I wish I would have had people around me that were not necessarily saying, yeah, get back together, marriages need to be fixed, because not all marriages can work out in some really hard situations. But if I would have had a core group of people just checking in on me, and if I was able to open up to someone, I think that would have made a big difference.
Yeah, and I think I needed that person in my life too. If there's somebody that's going through struggles right now, I mean, you got to lay it bare. I think when we take on those vows, like sickness and health and better for worse, we owe it to our commitment to make it work. We are both equally responsible in making this marriage successful. Right. I tried when Marianne and I split up. I tried so desperately to try and make her look like she was the bad one. Yeah. Like I would make sure that I'd be chirping in people's ears about, oh, see what Marianne did, or she's not thinking about us at all, or all that kind of stuff. And so I heaped it up, and then people would buy it too, and they'd get on the train. Right. And really, that's not helpful. It's not helpful at all, and nor do we want to. We're not paving the way for reconciliation that way. Right. If we're just heaping up grievances.
Yeah, and because of those times, we had a hard time getting back together and fixing all those little relationships that we had kind of crushed with our friends about, Dave did this and he's a jerk, and now I had to get my friend to like him again. Right. And so that's another thing I would recommend, that if there's a friend that's close to you that's going through a divorce, don't take sides. There are 2 sides to every single marriage.
Absolutely.
People mostly heard about Dave's side. I was more quiet and reserved about what he did.
Or my responsibilities of the relationship.
Yeah. And so taking sides was a really difficult part for us to pass. Right. Because, I don't know, it's hard to get back together with your husband when a lot of people hate you.
Well, and I've often said when I do wedding sermons that what we do at a wedding really gives us all the answers to what you require.
Right.
Right. We have those people around us. That's what the party is supposed to be there for. You invite all the guests. Like, there was a reason this was set up. Even the fact that you do vows, you don't do that anywhere else. Right. Like, it should scare the bejeebies out of you saying those things.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that kind of stuff, when you get in trouble, you pull away from the very things that really would have helped you stay together.
Yep.
So you pull away from community.
Yeah.
You pull, and you give yourself all the excuses for why those vows don't matter anymore. And again, we're talking in terms of there's no abuse. There's no, this is just a relationship falling apart. We want to make that distinction, because I mean, there's already a lot of, such a tough situation, and then people are feeling more guilt. So that's not what we're talking about. But the relationship where, like you guys, where it was just, you guys are bickering back and forth, but you pull away from everything that you need, right? And I think weddings give us all that. We already know what we need. And so maybe that'd be one of the takeaways from this is develop those. Who do you have? Who do you go to? Who do you have that's honest in your marriage enough to be able to say, look, maybe you're being the jerk and you need to go back and you need to make this right, or whatever that.
Exactly. Yeah. And you need to find those, like, it's so easy for us to go to our peers. Mm-hmm. And we need somebody that's going to be rough with us.
Right.
We need somebody that's going to give us the straight goods. Right. Not just give us what we want to hear.
And we were talking last night while we were all nervous about how selfish we were.
Yeah, super selfish.
Selfishness played a big part. And not many people said, hey, Marianne, you're being really selfish right now. And I don't know how I would have responded had somebody approached me and said that. But
It would have gone a long way.
maybe. Also, when we were talking, we didn't have a lot of people that were at our wedding that were really pushing for us to reconcile. There was a handful of people that said, we want your marriage to work. Out of the 320 people that were at our wedding, I think it was probably 5 to 10 people that wanted us
We're committed to
our vows.
keeping us to our commitments.
Yeah.
Right? And so
And that's why part of why I really wanted you guys to tell your story, because I think our culture has gotten so used to divorce that even in the church, we're just like, well, it happens. And then you move on. And there isn't that, no, this is worth fighting for. And I find it so interesting because in public, we're all about, marriage laws and all that kind of stuff. But in the church, where is that? Where is that accountability? Where is that support? Where is that? Because, you don't know how you would have reacted, but you also can't know because you didn't get the opportunity. Right? And I think there's a piece where we owe it to each other to step in to also go, look, hey, can we help you? Is there something we can work with? Is there something? Give you that opportunity. In the end, a friend of mine always says you can take a horse to water, you can't force him to drink. So we realize that. But it seems like that responsibility on the wedding party has been kind of just given away.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to, make
Show up.
a good day for today and then we move on. And
Yeah. And like really, like you hit on a good thing. Like you talked about the distinction. Like we were bickering, like you talked about this, like we were bickering. We had some major annoyances, like personality conflicts.
Like he chewed and breathed super loud.
When I swallow,
Like
listen to this.
he blinks
Oh my
loud.
goodness,
Everything
yes.
is loud.
I drink
Stop
loud.
breathing
Right.
already.
Yes, exactly. That's how it was. But so we had those things. It never crossed the line. Like I probably would have bordered on mental abuse, but we never got to the point of physical abuse. Yeah. And so I think there's an important distinction. Like not every marriage should be reconciled. I think there are things that relationships, like people can do to move on, but not everyone needs to be fixed. If there's abuse, like we need to protect those who are being abused big time.
I think our Mennonite culture and views, Mennonites don't get divorced. Mennonites need to stay together, even if there is sexual abuse, even if there's rape in marriage. The wife needs to, stay together. And in those situations, like we want to step up for those who are vulnerable, and we want to fight for those who are abused. And so when I think about our story isn't one where like that was a part of it, and so like there was the option for reconciliation was there, reunification was there,
right?
And I keep going back to how our life would be without having this fight for each other. Because we both did. When we decided to flip that switch and get back together, it was we were fighting for our marriage to work. And for you not to fight for your marriage is so sad for me. Because I never would have thought in a million years that I would have such a good relationship and such a good husband. And that fight was 100% worth it.
Yeah.
Well, and especially when he lost everything that you married him for, right?
Absolutely.
He has
no hair.
Lost my hair.
And I'm
His looks
still
are gone.
here. His hair's gone.
Yeah, that's a huge component of it. Like to fight for your marriage. We're willing to fight for so much, but not those things. And then, I can't even think about like what my life would have been like if I had to start over again.
Well, and I think, again, going back to church culture, but I think it's culture in general, we just don't hear these stories. Yeah. And so I think you get to that place where you kind of go, well, I guess this didn't work. Again, I'm convinced nobody wants to go to that place, right? And I mean, there's always reconciliation, and even if you end up divorced, whatever, like you can restart life, but nobody ever wanted to have to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think that we've done a disservice by not being honest about our struggles. I think we do a huge disservice because I know when Joseph and I go through struggles, you feel very alone. Like, and then the temptation is there, right? And I think hearing that and just going, okay, no, like we need to fight for that. It's worth it. I think it's just incredibly powerful. And
I don't know. It was it's a great way to show what God can do.
Right.
Because this is nothing to do with us.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and I think too, one of the things we talked about in between here was a little bit, so your choice to go back to church, even though the church kind of sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe the church didn't suck as much as I remembered it to suck, but it was, I don't know, my heart was opened.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's the part of it. I mean, as long as humans are in the church is going to struggle with us.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a piece though of going, okay, but if God is who he claims he is, then maybe there's hope. But you got to take that step. You
Right.
got to move into that. And again, I mean, if people are listening and they don't believe in God, you still need community.
Yeah.
And so if that's the place you're in and you're struggling, you find community, find something.
Someone, yes.
Life is really hard alone. Like we're very hard. I mean, that's why solitary confinement is the biggest thing, right? I mean, if you want to punish somebody, you keep them alone.
Alone, yeah.
That's why the COVID, I mean, we're so mad because we were isolated. That's because it's not how we were designed. But as soon as we're hurting, the instinct is to go hide. And I think for marriages, find somebody you can go and you can talk to and you can try to be inspired by, and people who will be willing to push you back together and say, hey, work on it. You can. So,
Yeah.
Well, any last thoughts you guys want to give?
No.
No, I'm just blown away. How much I love her for the things she said.
I'm pretty great. That was for you, Patrick.
Dave was digging for a compliment back. He was like, no, you're right. I am awesome. So.
I knew it was coming. I've been down this train before.
Yeah, I guess.
That's me. I tell him I'm pretty great all the time.
Well, I think you guys are both pretty great, and I appreciate you guys sharing. And our hope is that it inspires people. Like we said at the beginning, hatred is something that we talk about a lot, but reconciliation is something we see very little. And so maybe if we can find better ways to reconcile with our spouse, then maybe in 20 years, we won't have the same conversations in our culture about hating people based on the color of skin or hating people based on things that are so trivial and so, like you go, we're in 2022 and we're still doing this. Like, what are we, right? Doesn't it feel like that sometimes? And I think that's where, I mean, obviously I'm a follower of Jesus, so that's who I go to, but that's where his teaching of just love your neighbor. Like if you start with loving God, but that means love your neighbor. Like not solve the whole world, not solve everything. Just go and the people you interact with, those who are close, love them. I think that's the power of it. I mean, it seems so simple. It almost seems too simple. And yet I think that's how you end up making a worldwide difference. If you get everybody to love the 4 people who are closest to them, or 12, however many kids you need to have. Right?
I know.
Whatever it
no,
takes.
we're done. We're done at
done.
8. We have
Good.
8 kids and we're good.
We're not taking any more strays.
No.
I did try to give a few of mine away, but that did not go anywhere.
We're
Just
full.
kidding, kids. Just kidding. It was a joke. Just kidding, CAS. Anyways, with that, hey, thanks, guys.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks.